Hey, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Right-wing political commentator Laura Loomer has absolutely lost her mind now, and this is why I'm really trying to explain how things can fall into World War III. Well, what Laura Loomer is insinuating is the best way to do that. So she posted on X today, and she said, excuse me, maybe one of Iran's missiles they are firing into Israel to murder Jews will hit this instead. The people of Israel will prevail. What are the odds Al-Aqsa gets obliterated by the Iranian missiles fired into and over Jerusalem? So for those who don't know what any of this really means, what she's looking at here is the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. This is actually the Dome of the Rock, and it's the third holiest site in Islam, not the specific mosque, but the actual entire compound there. And there's a mosque right next to this dome that's the third holiest site in Islam, and it's been around for 1,400 years. Now, this exact site is exactly where Jewish people believe that the third temple needs to be rebuilt in order to usher in what they believe is their Messiah. So this is all biblical stuff. And I'm not much of a religious person, but it's interesting how, well, it's not interesting. It's actually pretty terrifying how we have psychopaths that are trying to make a geopolitical war into a religious war real quickly. So now she's saying, maybe one of Iran's missiles they are firing into Israel to murder Jews will accidentally just hit this instead. Okay, that's interesting. Here's the thing, guys. Israeli rabbis have already talked about how they can destroy this thing. And one of the ways they talked about destroying it would be to actually frame Iran as accidentally bombing this, while in reality, it was actually an Israeli drone, or Israeli bomb. So take a listen to this.
We don't know. Maybe one of the missiles will hit the mosque and clear the place for the third Bet HaMikdash. That could also be a miracle. If it was up to me, the last time when they shot hundreds of missiles, I would pretend that one missile came from Iran and shoot it down. Then all the Arabs will go against Iran, and it will be the end of the problems. You make them fight with each other, this bunch of lunatics. Never too late. You deal with a bunch of cowards. The Israeli leaders, they just want to pass the week. Let us survive this week. They don't think long term.
So, I mean, he's saying it himself, and this is, a rabbi, and he's saying it himself. The best way to destroy the mosque would be to just blame it on an Iranian missile. Well, that's pretty alarming. Now, what else has been happening today in the midst of all of this? What else has been happening today? Well, today as well, there's actually videos right now of Iranian ICBMs flying over Jerusalem, not East Jerusalem, though. They've been flying over West Jerusalem. And there's videos now showing, Iranian missiles reaching into West Jerusalem, and they were able to intercept and everything. So, Israelis are really going to start taking advantage of this, I believe. And if anything happens, here's a video, actually. Israeli settlers recorded an Iranian ballistic missile makes direct hit on West Jerusalem as air raids rang out and loud blasts were heard over the city. I don't want to play the audio and stuff because when I do too much, I get a YouTube, demonetization thing. But anyways, they're not able to penetrate. The ICBMs have been able to penetrate into Israel. Here's the thing. People are always wondering, well, that's surprising. Why isn't the Iron Dome intercepting all of these? The Iron Dome is it's not mainly meant for Iran's hypersonic missiles. That's not what the Iron Dome is intended to actually counter. It's intended to counter rockets. So things that are going hyposonic, below the speed of sound. That's what the Iron Dome is meant for. Doesn't mean they can't take an ICBM, but the chances of it actually succeeding are much, much less. That wasn't the intention of the Iron Dome. So when people are wondering why isn't the Iron Dome keeping up with this, well, it's because the Iron Dome wasn't even meant for missiles. They're meant for rockets. So that's the first thing. The second thing in here is that I'm telling you guys right now, if anything happens to that mosque, right? Anything happens to that mosque, Israel would have done it. Because if I was a psychopathic Messianic Jewish Zionist, and my intent was to basically start a religious war along with my evangelical Christian friends, The best way to do that would be well, obviously you want to get rid of the mosque, but how do you do that without being blamed for it, or, without doing it as a state sponsored thing? Well, maybe the Mossad's just going to plant a bomb there during a war and then just blame it on Iran. And in the ensuing confusion, the Arab world wouldn't believe it, but that's fine. They just need enough of an excuse, and they'll just go back and forth, and they'll put out a good video, or maybe the Mossad is somewhere out in Iraq or Syria or whatever, and they launch a missile, and they frame it as it's coming from Iran. There's so many ways that the Mossad could do this. It's really, I mean, you heard the Mossad say it themselves. The world is their playground. They get to do whatever the hell they want, and they can get away with it. So the fact that this is happening in the midst of Laura Loomer tweeting about it, it makes me question, why is Laura Loomer tweeting about it? Is she just tweeting about it because, she's psychopathic and she's tweeting, she's putting out a tweet a second? Or is it because, she's genuinely thinking about this and thinking about how this current situation, this current war with Iran could be used to advance Israel's interests, and not just Israel's interests, but this messianic biblical, Zionist interests, really, by blowing up this thing and blowing up the mosque. And honestly, it is really concerning because I don't think they recognize how bad the world in general would be destabilized if something like that were to happen. I don't think that they really grasp it at a fundamental level how bad things would become if Israel decided to do that. Israel would become, it would have made a geopolitical war into a much, much larger religious war. And it would be horrible for everybody involved. They don't care though. They don't care. You guys might remember, actually, I'd say maybe a few months ago, where there was it seemed like a Jewish Zionist rabbi in the White House press room. It was very odd. I didn't understand why. He didn't look like a journalist to me, but he asked Caroline Levitt, he asked her directly, is Trump considering building the third temple? And this is in the White House, press room. And I was confused. I was like, why is this rabbi asking a question about Trump, approving of the rebuilding of the third temple? Do you guys remember this? I was shocked. I was like, how is this? Why is this even a question? This is so weird. This is crazy. And Caroline Levitt, she's just smiling politely, and she's like, no, we haven't. Trump hasn't talked to me about that. And she's just smiling as if this is some sort of normal dialogue. These people, these psychos in power right now, they want to blow up the world. I think truly they are just ready to just start a new religious war. They want World War III. They want to usher in their Messiah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understand is that the Messiah for them is the Antichrist for Christianity and Islam. That's what I've been told. I'm a-religious, but this is what I've been hearing. And regardless, it's pretty freaky stuff. It's pretty freaky stuff because they're willing to just allow thousands and thousands, millions of people to die, all for these psychotic religious beliefs that ultimately are just completely bastardized. Zionism basically just bastardized Christianity. It's just a bastardization of religion. But this is kind of where we're headed. So it looks like that's kind of what's happening. And now we're already starting to see these political commentators, start to edge it on, which is pretty wild. In the index, while we're talking about all this stuff, Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, I've just been loving her recently. She's really just been she's just been awesome. And she actually responded back, and this really upset Laura Loomer, which, anytime Laura Loomer gets fumed, I'm all for it. And there's an account that posted, just in, Israel calls up to 100,000 reserve soldiers, per Reuters. And former Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene commented back saying, is Laura Loomer on the list? And Glenn Greenwald responded back as Ben Shapiro as well. So here we go. MTG is using her official government account to falsely accuse me of being an agent for Israel. Why would I be on an Israeli military list? I'm not an Israeli. I'm an American citizen. MTG exposes herself as a total Jew hater, unhinged behavior. Again, she's just, this lady just goes crazy. Actually, now that I mention this, it would be a good time to bring up my disclaimer here. Again, this is not intended to promote hate towards any group of people. I'm just kind of reporting on what's the information that's available. Great. Now that I said that, we can kind of go back to this. So this lady went absolutely crazy the past day, and just nonstop tweeting. Actually, one really crazy thing she said today that absolutely like it just shocked me. Well, here's another one on MTG. MTG is getting destroyed in the comments for lying about me to support her sick Islamic agenda. How much money are you making off of Muslims? Time to come clean about what this really is all about. What this is all really about. Over the last 4 months, you have lied and said there is no Sharia law in the United States, and now you're defending the Ayatollah and Groypers who are celebrating Iran's attack on U.S. allies to, quote, own the Jews. You are a fake Christian, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she just goes on, there's really no point to go any further. This lady has totally lost her, I can't say lost her mind. She really never had it. But she's going off the rails. She's going off the rails. And what's worrisome about all of this is, if she was just a deranged lunatic that had no proximity to power, that would be one thing. But she isn't just a deranged lunatic. She's a deranged lunatic with proximity to power. And that's really concerning. She posted today that she got off the phone with Donald Trump the night before. And she was speaking to Donald Trump, congratulating him on starting this war with Iran. And she was telling Donald Trump, the whole entire United States is proud of you. This is so great. And the only people who don't like you are psycho leftists and Islamists and everything else. So her proximity to power is something we have to be really like, we have to actually take seriously, because she's feeding all of this stuff into these people's brains that are calling the shots. I mean, she has a White House press pass. I'm pretty sure she has an office. She does have an office in the Pentagon. A journalist's office or a press office, whatever you call it. So, the level of proximity to power she has, while being this truly deranged, is really shocking and really worrisome. So now, when she's talking about all of this stuff, and that she has proximity to power to U.S. officials, just imagine the proximity to power she has with Israeli officials. And whenever she's getting told, hey, you should probably make a tweet on this, you should probably do this, well, she can really move things around. I mean, you also have to remember back in the summer, there was Heal Palestine. It was an organization that was bringing Palestinian refugees that had amputations, just children with amputations, to the United States just to get treated at doctors and then send them back. So getting them prosthetics, surgery, whatever they need, and bringing them back to Gaza, the West Bank, Jordan, wherever else. So it's just a short-term thing to get them treated and back. Well, she freaked out on social media. This was in the summer. And she immediately started tagging Marco Rubio, the State Department. She started calling up the Trump administration, anybody who would pick up. And within about 24 hours of Laura Loomer going psycho on this on X, the Trump administration, the State Department, then made a statement that Heal Palestine will be ceasing operations. They're not going to allow it, and they're not going to allow any Palestinians to come here to the United States to get treated. Regardless about the entire how you feel about any of that, what is crazy about all of this is that she was able to do all of that just by a phone call and by using her platform and knowing that she has access to these individuals that are actually going to listen to her. So now when you think about everything happening right now, knowing that Laura Loomer could just go ahead and tag these people, and she could call up whoever she has in the White House administration and just rant on and on and on like a psychopath. But because of the fact that she's, sucking up to Trump, he loves the compliments. He's very egotistical. He just wants to be, he just wants his ego boosted. So she's giving him that. He likes it. And he's just going to be like, that's interesting. Okay. This is kind of the situation we're in right now. This is what's going on. And it's worrisome. The United States is really volatile right now, along with Israel. And the volatility comes from a lot of these Zionists that are really influential. Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro. Every single time you see Donald Trump in Israel, the last few times, Ben Shapiro was in the background of a lot of these pictures. I found it very weird. Mark Levin, Donald Trump was recently speaking at the Republican Jewish Coalition, is where Mark Levin, I believe, came. And Mark Levin joined him on stage and talked about how Trump is amazing. He's such a great president, and he's doing everything that the United States should be doing, which is backing Israel and making sure we take on Iran and X, Y, and Z. And their obsession with it, and the fact that they have so much affinity to power pushing for this sort of stuff, it makes you recognize, okay, well, who's really calling the shots right now? Because the influence of the Zionist lobby is so powerful in the United States. It's so powerful that it feels like there's really no way you can it feels like there's no way you can actually have any sort of autonomy as president, regardless of who's in power, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. People were also posting this on social media, and I found it very odd. They were saying, and this is of course, establishment Democrats were stating this would have never happened if Kamala Harris was president, which I thought is it's absolutely ridiculous. It's a joke. And there are some people, and a lot of them apparently, that truly believe that this wouldn't have happened had it been a different president, as if any sort of president has autonomy here. This is what would have happened with any other president. This is what would have happened if Israel wanted this war so badly. With any other president, what would have happened is that Netanyahu or the Likud party or whatever, Israel would have conducted strikes on Iran. Iran would have retaliated, and then Israel would have needed help, and the United States would have came to its rescue. Now, if the United States and Netanyahu told Kamala Harris or whoever's president, hey, I'm going to go ahead and consider nuking Iran if you don't give me a continuous aid, well, there's the Samson option right there, and they're threatening to nuke. Even if it's a U.S. enemy, they're threatening to nuke the entire region, nuke Iran, and you would have had a president that would have chose the better of the two evils. This is exactly what happened in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And Jonathan Pollard, the convicted Israeli spy, talked about this. Actually, let me see if I can pull up a video of it when he was he literally said, and he said this just 3 months ago in the Jerusalem Post, he said that if the United States doesn't continue supplying Israel with weapons, then that's fine. We'll just go ahead and nuke all of our enemies, and we'll just get it done with just finish it all up right there and then. And that's what they did in the 1973 Yom Kippur War, and they were able to get away with it, and the United States just ended up supplying them weapons. So let me go ahead and see if I can find this video. Here it is. Let me share my screen here so you guys can see this. There we go. So take a listen to this here.
Consider him a friend. I was proud that just a day after on October 8th, he immediately said no water, no electricity, no food, no nothing. I mean, it's hard for me to admit this. We are now feeding our enemy.
It's right here.
I mean, this has never happened in history before. And you have to ask why. And I don't want to hear this business that it's consistent with Jewish morality. It isn't. Anybody saying that doesn't know anything about Jewish morality at all.
Well, I think also our leaders have had their necks in a vice grip by other countries who...
Okay, let me give you an example of that. I was criticized very heavily for opposing the ceasefire, the American-imposed ceasefire in Lebanon on us. And I was told by certain people in the government, look, we didn't have choice because we were being threatened with a complete cutoff of arms. So I listened to this, and the individual telling me this said, you don't believe this? Or what? I said, no, I believe that the Biden administration, as I called it, did threaten us. But I said, you're mistaken if you think there's never a choice. There was a choice. He said, well, what, is it to have our weapons cut off? I said, no, let me bring you back to October 1973 during the Yom Kippur War. Army at that point to extract
a little bit because it's kind of long.
Diplomatic concessions from us. And what happened? What happened was an A4 Skyhawk was parked at Tel Nof Air Base with some interesting weapons under its wings. And we told the Americans, take your eye in the sky and take a good look at the airplane that's on that runway. And the next day, the airlift started.
Crazy.
So the guy that I was talking...
Which airlift?
To Israel, the arms airlift.
So in other words, we threatened their...
We threatened to use unconventional weapons. I'll leave it at that. And so he said, is this what you want us to threaten now? I said, absolutely, except this time I want us to go forward with it if necessary. If they think we're bluffing...
Crazy.
We go forward with it. Look.
So I mean, there you go. I mean, he said it himself. If they think if they think we're bluffing, go forward with it. This is Jonathan Pollard, the convicted Israeli spy who spent 30 years in federal prison, and he's saying it outwardly. If they think we're bluffing, go forward with it. Now, here's the thing: John Kiriakou, the former CIA whistleblower, he also recently gave let's say maybe a couple months ago, he did a video, an interview. It's on YouTube. And he said that when Donald Trump did the first airstrikes on Iran, Donald Trump was actually confronted with the Samson option by Netanyahu, meaning that Netanyahu told Trump, if you don't use your B-2 bombers to knock out Iran's nuclear sites, that's fine. We're just going to go ahead and nuke Iran. And Donald Trump thought it would be the better of the two evils if he just went ahead and used the U.S. B-2 bombers instead, because we can't have Israel nuking the entire region. So right now, when we talk about this, the Samson option is being used for Israel's enemies and not, Israeli allies. It's being used against countries like Iran, and it's Israel's threatening the United States, but not threatening the United States like, hey, we're going to nuke the U.S. Hey, but we're going to nuke all of our enemies, and we're just going to blow up the whole region. And they would go through with it. They would really go through with it. And the United States is like, okay, well, the better of the two evils would probably be not to allow this to happen. This is kind of the blackmail that Israel's really put us in. And, the thing is, they're stating they would go through with it. I 100% believe they would go through with it because ultimately, these individuals, these Israelis that are currently in power, they don't give a damn about anybody but themselves. And they have a Messianic belief for wanting to take over the entire Middle East. And they view people that are not them less than. They have a sense of supremacy, a religious supremacy, a Jewish supremacy in that way. And the entire Likud party would have no problem just allowing the entire region to be nuked, murdering hundreds of millions of people, really hundreds of millions, the entire Middle East, if it ensured their existence, and they would be able to go and continue on with Greater Israel. I'm certain of that. So this is the situation we're in now. And this all happened because we had one president that tried to stop Israel from developing nuclear weapons, and well, he was assassinated. So, maybe things would be a lot different had history taken a much different course. So with all of this being said, there's this former Marine, this Marine veteran here, and I want to show you guys this video. Because this Marine veteran made this video that's going pretty viral right now, and he's basically saying there's no greater threat, really, right now than Israel. And so this is pretty interesting. I fully agree with this. Take a listen to this. Let me go ahead and start from the beginning here.
I support Iran dropping every single rocket in their arsenal right in the middle of Israel, wiping that entire country off the map. That's what I support. I don't support Iran. I don't support Israel. But of the two, I would rather see Iran wipe out Israel and watch how fast the war ends. The sad part about it is these same veteran content creators have zero knowledge of what's even going on over there. None. They don't spend hours and hours a day researching outside of government propaganda to educate themselves so they can make informed decisions. For those of you with dual citizenship in this country with the United States and Israel, it's time to pack your bags, get the fuck out of our country, and go die for the country that you actually show allegiance to, because it's not the United States. Go back to your homelands with your Jewish chosen people, and go fight, because if you really believe you're God's chosen people, trust me, they're going to need your help, and God will protect you, right? So go back and fight for your country, God's chosen people.
So, I mean, pretty strong words there. Actually, this would be a perfect time to bring my disclaimer up again. Again, this is not intended to promote hate towards any group of people. We're just discussing videos and facts and information. Great. Now that I got that out of the way, I mean, honestly, he's just putting it out. He's just really saying everything that's on his heart. Again, he's going viral for publicly supporting Iran in its threat to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And I mean, the reason he feels so strongly this way is because people are really, really starting to get fed up. Keep in mind, while everything's going on right now, Netanyahu's son is partying it up in Miami. He has a penthouse in Miami that costs I don't know how much every single year. And he's just waking up every single day with his morning coffee. There's always photos of I can't remember his name, Netanyahu's son in Miami. There's always photos of him in the morning sitting on his balcony in his PJs, looking all cozy and pathetic and weak, while Americans die for him and die for his country. And he's just here in the United States on, just a tour, just enjoying himself, doesn't really matter. Why aren't they being sent over? Laura Loomer, Mark Levin, they want this war so bad. Go over there. Go over there. Because the bloodthirstiness for war, this is unlike anything I've ever, I really don't understand how people could be hungry for war. It's such an odd thing for me. I don't, it really shocks me. Like truly, they're just so bloodthirsty. They want to see people die. I think they really do want to see people die. They want to see whatever achieves their ultimate goals, which is total control of the Middle East, total takeover of the Middle East. And Israel is using its allies as useful idiots to carry this out. You know what happened 3 days ago or so? Israel's former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, I made a video on it. He gave a speech and he said that Turkey is the new Iran. And it shocked a lot of people. Keep in mind, Turkey is a NATO ally. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene today, she quoted that and said, what the hell is going on? Why do we have Israeli officials basically threatening NATO allies? What are these psychos talking about? And here's the thing, they'll never be satisfied. There is going to be infinite war. Infinite war. If Iran is gone, Israel will come up with a new enemy and will continue to have enemies because its ultimate objective is it wants total regional, actually not just regional, it wants to be a world superpower. It truly wants to control the world. It wants Jerusalem as the capital of the world. I really think that this is kind of what's going on. They want Jerusalem as the capital of the world. They have a biblical messianic psycho vision of that in mind. They want everything from the Nile to the Euphrates. They want to pick up the Arabs, scoop them out of the Middle East and dump them to Europe, completely take them out of their homeland. They want to cause riots in Europe. I think this is kind of where we're headed. It seems so obvious. So I think what I'm shocked more about than anything else is the fact that Europeans, conservative mainstream again, because, there are people that are outside of the mainstream that are a bit more aware of what's going on. They're not watching the mainstream media. But what I find so shocking is that the West supports Israel while knowing that Israel is leading to the destruction of the West. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. The entire West is supporting the project in the Middle East that is leading to the West's destruction. The reason it's happening is because ultimately that tiny project in the Middle East basically has massive influence over the West institutions, over large political figures in the West. So it could do this. A country, truly a military project state has hijacked the governments of basically the entire West, heavily influencing them, heavily pushing them to go in the direction they want them to go. We saw in Australia was becoming very pro-Palestine. They recognized the Palestinian state. And then what happened? We had that random, that psycho, extremist attack that left so many dead. And all of a sudden, Australia completely changed course. What's so interesting, though, is that just, months prior to that, Australia was looking into previous attacks it had, anti-Semitic attacks it had on synagogues. And the Australians were saying, these anti-Semitic attacks on synagogues, it seems like actually it's foreign actors are being involved here, and those foreign actors aren't Iran. This was just last year. Australians were reporting on this. That's odd. And then if we think about the 1994 UK bombing, and I already showed this video a lot, so I'm not going to bring it up again. The MI5 officer for the United Kingdom, where she was saying that Israelis actually bombed the UK embassy, the Israeli embassy in the United Kingdom, and to basically end the Palestinian movement in the UK. And then they blamed it on two Palestinians, and the MI5 wrote a report conclusively showing it was the Israelis that actually bombed their own embassy. And until this day, the MI5 has not released the report on the 1994 Israeli embassy bombing. While UK intelligence knows that the Israeli Mossad did it, but they still haven't released the report. I kind of want to make a movement to get that document out because people really need to see it. But no, what I'm saying here is, long story short, Israel has hijacked the West, and if there's a Western state that starts to veer off course, well, Israel has an array of arsenals at its disposal. It can conduct false flag operations, blackmail powerful officials. It'll do whatever it needs to do to get these governments in line. And that's ultimately ultimately what we're seeing here. And the West is just going to follow Israel along and do whatever Israel wants until basically the entire West is destroyed and the Israeli empire basically starts. That's the ultimate goal. And then they want to have Jerusalem the capital of the world. That's where we're headed. So. And it doesn't seem like things are getting any better. And when we have U.S. politicians talking about it all, and we start hearing that U.S. servicemen, just like the 3 recently, have died fighting Israel's wars, really, well, then Trump goes on air today and says, oh, that sucks, but that's just the way it is, and more, unfortunately,
the fallen
die. So let me play this.
Send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but
there will likely be more. There's likely going to be more, guys. It's okay. More Americans are going to die. It's sad. This is just the way it is. There will likely be more. More Americans are going to die for Israel. Just, suck it up. That's okay. They don't give a damn. They really don't give a damn. I wish he would put his son. Why doesn't he put Barron on the front lines? Since he really doesn't care so much. That there'll likely be more. Why don't you put your damn son on the front lines, since you don't give a shit, clearly? Why doesn't Laura Loomer go on the front lines, since they don't give a shit about the lives of other people, clearly? I'd love to see Mark Levin on the front lines. He'd get taken out so quick. Truly, these people do not give a damn. And they're begging and they're thirsty for war, and then they just tell, Americans that are currently in the military. Imagine the families right now that have their kids stationed overseas in that area right now, and then they hear Trump say that. How are they supposed to feel? Oh, okay, you're right. Trump just said, unfortunately, there's going to be more. That's just the price they have to pay, because ultimately we just have to die for our ally Israel, while Netanyahu's son is partying it up, drinking, and just waking up late and going out to his balcony in Miami and doing whatever he wants while Americans die for him. That's okay, though, because at least we're doing it for our greatest ally, Israel, and that's all that really matters. So just be a good goy and suck it up. I don't like. That's where we're at. This is the state of America today. So I wish things would change. Let's see, what else did I want to show you guys here? Actually, this is great. This kind of we'll just segue into this easily here. We have, of course, Israel's psychopathic foreign minister here, Bezalel Smotrich, and he gave a speech today, and he's basically stating what the plan is. And this is something that actually the entire world should be worried about, because it affects the entire world. And he says, of course, the notion of reoccupying Gaza and forcibly displacing the Palestinians, that's the number one thing. And he goes on and says, not, of course, just Gaza, but also the West Bank. Israel seeks to continue the demographic revolution, ethnic cleansing, disposition of Palestinians, and Jewish domination, also against Palestinian civilians of Israel in the Negev and Galilee. Smotrich is simply saying the quiet part out loud. It's already taking shape on the ground. The Israeli apartheid regime is deepening Jewish supremacy in the area under its control, from the river to the sea, through killing, expulsion, and oppression of Palestinians. The whole thing is, of course, in Hebrew. But he's going on and just saying it, we're going to occupy, and what we have to do is kick out everybody. So where are the 3+ million Palestinians in the Israeli-occupied West Bank going to go? Where are they going to go? Dump them up where? Into Syria? Into Lebanon? Into Jordan? Do you want to destabilize those countries as well? Where do you plan to have them go? They really can't say that, because they know that it's going to destabilize their borders. But that's what they want. That's what they want. They have no interest in actually keeping any of their borders stable. Because if Israel had peace along its borders, then how is it going to justify expanding for its Greater Israel project? It can't have peace. It has to have chaos all the time. All the time. This is why actually Israel loves having unstable borders, because by having unstable borders, then Israel can justify having a buffer zone. And whenever something goes awry, well, Israel will seek to expand its buffer zone in the interest of its own security. And that's the excuse. So it's going to destabilize its borders, and then it's going to expand and create buffer zones for its security. And then just a couple weeks later, all of a sudden you see these buffer zones being filled up by psycho settlers building their outposts there. And once the settlers have outposts there, you think they're ever going to withdraw? Absolutely not. And then something else will happen, and Israel will expand its buffer zone. And all of a sudden, then you see a settler plop a military outpost there. And then Israel expands its buffer zone. And then a settler plops its military outpost there. So the Israeli government is working with these psycho settlers in order to advance its expansion into the region. That's what the Israelis are doing. The Israelis are using more than just psycho settlers, though, to do this. They're also using ethnic minorities in the region. One of them being actually the Druze. So the Druze are a community. They're an entirely separate religion, and right now they're predominantly, especially there's many of them in the Golan Heights. And what the Israelis are doing is they actually want to basically absorb the Druze into Israel itself. They're giving them Israeli citizenship. They want to absorb the Druze into Israel itself. And a lot of the reason they're trying to form these relations with the Druze is because ultimately, I don't know if you guys have actually heard of this. Let me pull it up. I should probably do a whole separate video on this. This is the way Israel is going to form its greater Israel piece by piece. And one of the ways it's going to do it is it's going to expand from the Golan Heights, and it's going to go from the Golan Heights south of Damascus all the way up to the Euphrates. This is kind of the way they want to do it. And the way they plan to do that, though, is by using and kind of recruiting the local inhabitants of that area. So let me go ahead and share my tab here so you guys can see this. This is what's known as the Druze corridor. So there we go. Here it is. So what you see right here is this is basically a chopped up Syria, and you see the Golan Heights right over here. This star right over here. This is where the Golan Heights is, and you see this thing that says Joint Druze-Israeli Corridor, and this is all Syria, by the way. And here's Damascus right over here. So this is parts of Syria, and you see these new chopped up countries. And up here, we see Kurdistan, actually, and this is the Euphrates River over here. So what the Israelis plan to do, the way that they're going to form their greater Israel is they're going to actually they're going to have to absorb some of the local inhabitants, and they form good relations with them. So the Israelis are going to form good relations with the Druze, and this is how they're going to be able to kind of basically take over Syria from the south of Damascus all the way up to the Euphrates. This is kind of their plan, by basically absorbing that population there, and having that population basically become Israeli and giving them rights and everything else. And that's how they're going to be able to get this joint Druze-Israeli corridor. Now, you think that this might sound ridiculous. Well, I mean, the Israelis have been saying ridiculous things consistently, and they've been able to actually take action on a lot of their ridiculous things because nobody is stopping them. So their goal is to basically break up Syria, which they've already been doing a great job at, and fragmenting it by ethnic blocks, by religious blocks, in order to eventually expand and do their entire greater Israel project. Now, what's interesting, and here's actually, let's see, what's this? Here's Israel right now. Of course, this is the Golan Heights. Only the United States recognizes the Golan Heights, I believe. And again, you see autonomous Druze territory. You see Druze here. And Israel's going to be, working with the Druze to basically try to expand. Not all Druze support Israel. Absolutely not. A lot of them also, they're being occupied in the same way. But Israel's going to try to take in and absorb as many as possible in order to kind of advance its interests here. Here's another kind of map showing the same thing. And again, it's showing the Druze area, Turkish area. So this is kind of what Israel is planning in order to work its way all the way up through the region. They've really figured this out from every single angle you can possibly think of. This is kind of the Israeli way. This is what they plan to do. And actually, another thing with Syria right now, they basically plan to do the same thing with Syria. Let me see. I have another photo I wanted to show you guys. And everybody talks about that, oh, well, this is a regime change operation. What's happening right now is a regime change operation. Let me make things very clear to you guys. What the United States and Israel are trying to do in Iran is not a regime change operation, because they don't want a new regime in place. A regime change operation means you want to replace the current government with a new government, and you want to keep Iran the way Iran is. That's not the case at all. Israel doesn't want that at all. Israel doesn't want Iran to be the way it is. Israel wants to fragment Iran. Israel wants to create a failed state and fragment it by ethnic blocks, the same exact way they did with Syria. So let me go ahead and share this tab here. I showed this tab to you guys yesterday, this photo here, and I'm going to show it again. And this is what Israel would love. Israel would love to see Iran broken apart into chunks and pieces by ethnic blocks here. And you have all of these different pieces. You see Persia, southern Azerbaijan, southern Turkmenistan, all of these different regions. Of course, you see Kurdistan right over here. And this is the entire thing is Iran's current borders. Now, this graph might not be fully accurate, but this is what Israel wants. Israel wants to basically fragment the entire region by ethnic blocks. Now, you guys might be thinking, well, no, Wally, that's not going to happen. Well, guess what? Right now, as we speak, right now, in this current war, the Kurdish fighters are already stating that they're working with CENTCOM. They're working right now. The United States is sharing intelligence with Kurdish forces in Iraq right now. And those Kurdish forces in Iraq are taking out Iranian militias in Iraq. This is happening as we speak. So Kurdish forces are already doing and have been, they're doing intelligence sharing with the United States right now in order to eventually basically have their own sovereignty in northwest Iran, and they want to have their own autonomous zone, the same way that there's an autonomous zone for the Kurds in Iraq and Syria. This is kind of what they want as well. Of course, they would love an autonomous zone in Turkey as well. But Turkey has a strong central government right now, so there's this whole push with the Israelis to also take on Turkey afterward. This is why they call Turkey the new Iran, because this is their plan. It doesn't end. They're just going to keep chopping up the Middle East and bombing countries and making failed states, and then working with some of the minorities in those states and tossing out the other minorities and figuring out ways to slowly expand. So how wonderful would this be? How wonderful would this be for Israel if you basically have a Druze corridor all the way up, and you can bring that Druze corridor as close as you can all the way up towards the Euphrates, have it touching Iran's border. But guess what? This time, what they can do is they can have it touch all the way up, and there is now going to be a fragmented Iran, and they're going to have the Kurds there on the other side, and they want to take on the Kurds as their allies. They're trying to build good relations with the Kurds. And they're going to basically be able to have just split up Syria, Iraq, and just have that entire thing. I think that unless somebody really stops them, this is basically where we're headed. And it's happening actually a lot faster than I expected. They're doing a really good job at making this happen a lot faster than I expected. Here's another map again, kind of similar, regarding showing you kind of how the Middle East is this corridor that I was just mentioning. So let me zoom in here so you guys can see that. And this says, again, the same thing. You see the American flag here. This is because the Kurdish, the Kurdish forces that are backed by the United States. And the blue here is that Druze corridor again that Israel wants to capitalize on. So that way it could basically build a corridor all the way up to its allies, the Kurds on the other side of the Euphrates right there. And right now this is just Syria. But of course, there's a Kurdish autonomous zone in Iraq, and what they want is a Kurdish autonomous zone in Iran. So that way you can connect all three of those Kurdish autonomous zones, and that's how they're going to be able to kind of get their greater Israel. And then they can start kind of focusing on how do they work their way down the rest of the Middle East so they can get the parts of land that they want, Saudi Arabia, everything else. And they're kind of just doing it piece by piece by piece by piece by piece. And we're just watching it all happen. So anyways, guys, I think that's really it for this video here. If you found it interesting, the best way you can support my channel is honestly super gifts and chats if you want to do that, or you can join as a member. There's a join button below, and if you click that, it's just about $5 a month, and I do member-only videos that you can see as well if you join as a member, so it would really support my channel so I can do this for you guys as a full-time job. But otherwise, I hope you found this interesting. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button as well. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.